How do you know whether something is actually sprained really bad or you actually fractured it? I'm going to tell you in this video. My name is Dr. Story. I've been a chiropractor for over 23 years. I'm going to give you realistic advice based on my experience. It's very common on YouTube for people to ask me a question in the comment section saying, I have shoulder pain, is it fractured? Well, it's impossible for me to know, obviously, without looking at your shoulder, physically, testing you through a physical exam, and x-raying you. There's no way for me to know if something's fractured. However, I'm going to give you some general advice that you can use. I'm going to give you some guidelines to know whether you sprained it or you fractured it. Now, we're assuming that you had a trauma. If you woke up in the morning and have shoulder pain, there's no way that you could have injured yourself while sleeping such that you actually fractured a bone. In such rare cases, that in theory could actually occur if someone was extremely ill with severe osteoporosis at an advanced age. But by then, you're probably not watching YouTube. So in order to create a fracture, you need enough force with enough torsion to actually make the bone break. Now, that usually requires a trauma. However, if you actually sprain the joint and pull on the ligaments that hold the bone together, that can cause severe pain. The trouble is that when a bone breaks, most people will actually feel or hear something crack. What's interesting is when you tear a ligament in a severe grade 3 type of sprain, it also makes a noise. So just because you heard a noise, number one, does not mean that the bone broke. You can have actually broken part of the cartilage, or the cartilage could have pulled the bone off and actually fractured in that way. So there's many different ways to actually have this injury. But as a general rule, fractures usually occur in the middle part of the bone. So if we're talking about the humerus, the fracture usually occurs in the middle part, whereas the sprain occurs up in the joint. The second thing is you have to have an x-ray. Again, on YouTube, sometimes people will ask me, I have pain somewhere, my finger hurts, is it fractured? There's no way to know unless you actually take an x-ray. And even an x-ray sometimes will be difficult to discern if it's fractured. It has to be really fractured. If it's a subtle fracture, sometimes you won't be able to see it on an x-ray, but you will see it on a CAT scan, which leads us to a question, if CAT scans are so good, why do we take an x-ray? There's a couple reasons. The first is x-rays have less radiation, a lot less radiation, so you have to take that into consideration. And the second thing is x-rays are extremely inexpensive, whereas CAT scan machines are extremely expensive. So as a starting point, you'll always take an x-ray. If you see the fracture on an x-ray, there's simply no reason to do a CAT scan. The other thing is that usually with a fracture, you will be unable to move the actual limb. So if I break my humerus, I'm not going to be moving my arm at all. The body will actually stop me from using that. Whereas with a sprain, usually you'll have the ability to at least move the arm, but it'll hurt severely. So those are some guidelines to know whether or not you have a fracture or not. As a general rule, if you're actually asking this question, you need to go to a doctor and have an x-ray. In my office, what we do is we actually send people out for x-rays, and we have a radiologist read the x-ray as well as myself reading the x-ray. The nice thing these days is x-rays are no longer put up on a light board where you need to look at the actual film. They're on computers now. So you can play with and manipulate the contrast. So x-rays are actually better and easier to decipher fractures than the old way of putting it on a light box. When I first graduated from chiropractic school, there was no such thing as digital x-rays. When I took my own x-rays, and I used to have my own x-ray machine, we would actually have to take the x-ray film, go into a dark room, develop the actual x-rays, and whatever the x-ray came out as, that's how it came out. Now, you can actually take one x-ray and actually manipulate the contrast to actually see very subtle fractures and hairline fractures. So x-rays have become even better these days. If you thought this video was interesting, give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. If you have any questions, ask in the comments section below. And if you do be so kind as to share this on social media, I greatly appreciate it. The phone's ringing, I gotta get back to work, so I'll see you next time.